Maybe you can walk us through, how you think about your ethical obligations about saving the life of the baby versus trying to save the life of the mother, and how does that show up in your patient room? I think another thing that's very common, Chris, that we hear out on social media and the culture is that abortion needs to be legal to save the life of the mother. Now, I know that statistically, this is actually a very small percentage of the abortions that are performed for the sake of the life of the mother. The vast majority are on demand and for other reasons. Maybe you can walk us through, how you think about your ethical obligations about saving the life of the baby versus trying to save the life of the mother, and how does that show up in your patient room?
Right. So you are correct. It is much more uncommon than is often put out there. I have never had a situation where an abortion had to be done to save the life of the mother. I have two patients. I have the mother and the baby, and there can be severe medical conditions in the mother that require earlier delivery. And sometimes you have to deliver the baby early and the baby might not make it because it's early. That is different than, oh, well, you have this condition, so we're going to kill your baby. And so you're not pregnant. We can always induce labor or a C-section, or we can always separate the mother and the baby. But that's not an abortion.
So you've never had an instance where you have had to say, or where a patient has had to consider possibly having an abortion versus taking her baby to at least birth, even if it wasn't full term?
Maybe it's better to just use an example. One example that could be used if a woman's, very early, like 19 weeks, 20 weeks, so the baby can't live outside the womb, her water breaks. And what happens, sometimes that fills up and rarely, but what happens with time is sometimes that woman gets infected. And she's getting infected. She's going to get sick very fast. The baby's not going to make it either way. And sometimes you have to induce labor to save the mother. We're not killing the baby. The baby, unfortunately, will not make it, but that is not an abortion. So sometimes we have to separate the mother and the baby. That doesn't mean we're killing the baby. We're not dismembering the child. We're treating the child with respect.
Wow.
We're letting the mother hold the baby. I mean, this is a whole different scenario. And again, you're always trying to save both lives. And you do everything you can do to maximize that.
I think that language is very helpful, that you do everything you can to save life. And sometimes you have to separate the mother and baby, but there's still dignity, value, and worth in the baby. It's not
you're not chopping it up or actively. There's a difference between active killing, which is what an abortion does, versus what you're talking about is separating the mother and the baby, so that there can be dignity in the situation. The mother gets to hold the baby and see the baby and all of that. Would that be kind of the differentiation between the two?
Absolutely. And then there are, that is a very good explanation. And there are other situations, thinking of a situation where at 24 weeks, the woman had severe preeclampsia. I mean, if we don't get this baby delivered, she's going to have seizures and get very sick. Well, we did some things to maximize that, gave steroids, and the baby was delivered. And the baby was delivered at 24 weeks instead of 40 weeks. And the baby spent several months in the NICU. Now, some of those babies don't do well, but I can tell you this baby now is a beautiful 14-year-old girl.
Wow.
And so there are situations where we have to act and deliver early, but you're always trying to maximize both patients.